Good evening, everyone. Lots happening with news, but even more happening with weather right now. So today, our digital stream will be weather only. So we're going to jump right into it. We issued first alert weather days for Thursday and Friday. We did that actually on Sunday, so we can give you the heads up on when we expected some impacts locally. But we actually added a first alert weather day for Wednesday. So I'm actually pulling up my stream. There we go. Feel free to jump in the comments on YouTube if you have any questions. We'll try to dive into that. But the first alert weather day on Wednesday is for a cold front that's going to be sliding through our area. It's going to bring a little bit of instability with it, so some rain and some thunderstorms are likely as we head into your Wednesday. But I think that we're going to have rain chances through the overnight, and that's because we're also going to be tracking what we expect to be Hurricane Helene at that point, lifting northward. And as it moves inland, that rain is going to start to move in well ahead of that center of circulation. So our first alert weather day for Thursday and Friday or because of this potential tropical cyclone 9 that we're currently tracking in the Caribbean. We expect it to be very rainy, and we expect it to get windy. We're talking about tropical storm force wind gusts possible across all of North Georgia, including the metro. And I was not here the last time we had tropical storm force wind gusts from a tropical system in the metro, but I was told that there was a lot of power outage issues, and that will be a possibility as we head into the end of the work week. Right now, things are pretty quiet for us on First Alert Radar. Some spotty showers. It's warm, 87 degrees, y'all. It's 8 o'clock, and we are still just shy of 90 degrees. Just very, very warm. Going to continue to be warm through the overnight hours. The numbers will slide into the low 70s, and that's about as good as it's going to get. 72, 73 degrees across most of the city of Atlanta. Slightly cooler when you head into the suburbs. I want to get you to our next rain opportunities, and there is a chance for a spotty shower, maybe even a stray storm tomorrow, mainly north of the city of Atlanta. I want to get you through the afternoon hours and check in the comments. Nope. Scattered showers and storms will start to bubble up as we get into the 2-3 o'clock time frame. I really expect the bulk of the rain tomorrow to be across the northern tier of the state, and that's where there will be the most instability. Storm Prediction Center actually giving us a level 1 out of 5 risk that we could get a rogue strong to severe thunderstorm, so something we will be watching as we head into the afternoon hours. Temperatures are going to be hot yet again tomorrow. Listen, yesterday, we actually broke the record high forecast. We hit 96 degrees today. The record was 94. That was set back in 1931, I believe. And then yesterday, 97 degrees. Ridiculous, right? Which that record was 95 degrees. So both days, not only did we beat the record, but we beat it by a couple of degrees. So this unseasonably hot stretch of weather continues into the day tomorrow. I expect us to get into the 90s in the afternoon. Yeah, Donald Reed, I can also get you out the chat. Thank you for being here, though. 91 degrees for the afternoon high across the city of Atlanta. Slightly cooler once you get into the suburbs, but another day where it's just going to be a bit of a scorcher. First alert weather day in the forecast for Wednesday for prefrontal scattered showers and storms. It does appear that the axis of heaviest rain will be north and west of the I-85 corridor on Wednesday. This is all associated with that front. It's going to be a bit of a slow mover, so scattered rain and storms will be possible, especially heading into the afternoon hours. You can see how the front kind of creeps. It slowly moves in, so that best rain chance throughout the bulk of the day will be north and west of the city of Atlanta, but we think that as we head later into the day, that will gradually sink further south and east, which means that unfortunately during the evening commute, things could get a bit messy as far as rain is concerned, scattered rain and thunderstorms through the evening. And then moisture is just going to continue to filter up because that tropical system will be lifting northward at that point. And that's why that first alert weather day will continue into Thursday and Friday. So here's the latest on potential tropical cyclone 9. And just for avid weather people or just people that are curious, why this long name for a system? And it's because the low is not closed. Basically, every tropical system has a closed center of circulation. Whenever that center of circulation is not closed, it's technically unorganized, but it can still produce strong winds. And because these winds are 35 miles per hour, it would technically, if it had a closed low, it would be a tropical depression. So the forecast is for it to intensify and organize. So they're just saying potential tropical cyclone 9 is the status it's given when it's not organized but will organize. And what it allows to happen is a whole lot of things. But number one, the National Hurricane Center can start putting out guidance on the forecast track, because otherwise we would have to show you a bunch of different model runs on TV and the spaghettis, which I'm going to show you some of the spaghettis anyways, but just for a little bit of perspective, the long name is just because it's just not organized yet. It doesn't have a closed center of circulation. With that being said, a lot of the conversation that we're having is based off of model runs, right? What models do, they take current conditions and then they apply a set of physics and cloud physics and all kind of equations to it, and that produces future timestamps, right? Whenever you have data that is current but the low is not formed, there could be some discrepancies in the track a little bit once that low actually develops. So don't be surprised if things shift a little bit over the course of the next 24 hours. But we're just going off what we have now, and we're going to get you into seeing some of that model data. And here are the spaghettis. You've seen the spaghettis many, many times. These are just some of our favorite models that we take a look at. And this is the track that these models are putting out. Keep in mind, the lines represent where the center of circulation is. But the storm itself is massive. It's going to be massive at this point. It's going to be a very large system. So even if it takes the yellow line, takes the pink line, all lines point to some impacts to North Georgia and to a large chunk of our state, to be quite frank. Depending on where the actual center lines up, that determines the extremes or the extremities of those impacts, if that makes any sense. So let's go ahead and get you into the National Hurricane Center's best track. And once again, our whole goal here is for you guys to be able to understand what this means. And based off of a lot of our conversations with viewers on the streets, in chats, the thing that comes to mind whenever you guys see a chart like this, because the line in the middle is just kind of like the center line, and it's the line that we can put like the category of the system on. A lot of people think that that center line is actually like where the average, it's the average of where all the model runs are going, and somehow people think that the middle is exactly where it's going to go. And in theory, this is the cone of uncertainty. The cone of uncertainty is smaller whenever you're close to where we are now, 12 hours in the future. But once we get like 3 days in the future, it becomes wider because there's an array of opportunities for the system to go. And our whole goal with showing you that is so that everyone on that cone, inside of that cone, can kind of be aware and plan ahead, right? So we fully expect this to become a Category 1 hurricane over the course of the next 36 hours or so. The next name on the list is Helene. We do believe that this will be future Helene. There's another wave off the coast of Africa that has a pretty solid chance of developing over the course of the next week. It should develop after Helene. So there is a 10% chance that we may have to switch a name. You know, whichever one develops first is going to be Helene. But guidance right now is hinting that this one will develop first. So we're just going to call it potential Cyclone 9, not potential Helene, just because it's not named yet. We're going to keep it accurate. But the forecast is for this to make landfall as a major hurricane, Cat 3 status, which is winds sustained at 115 miles per hour or greater. We were talking about this in the 3 o'clock show and the 4 o'clock show. This is the latest update that came out at 5, although a new one will be coming down within the next hour or so. In our newscast earlier, we were saying, you know, a lot of the model data that we're looking at, every model is hinting that this is going to be stronger than a Cat 2. The National Hurricane Center actually bumped it to a Cat 3. So they're in line with a lot of the data that we're seeing here in the First Alert Weather Center. As it moves inland, it's going to move fast. So everybody knows that when a hurricane moves inland, it weakens, right? But if it's moving really fast, it's going to make it further inland with decent power. So the track is going to become very, very important here because, once again, this could make it inland into our viewing area and produce sustained winds that are tropical storm force winds. For perspective, that's 39 miles per hour or greater. And I know that a lot of the conversation is like, oh, a 40 miles per hour wind. We get those in thunderstorms. We do get 40 miles per hour winds in thunderstorms, but the difference between a 40 miles per hour wind gust and a 40 miles per hour sustained wind is that for a continuous minute, the winds are blowing 40 miles per hour, whereas a wind gust, it could be 5 seconds, it could be 10 seconds, right? Doesn't sound like it makes a big difference, but whenever you're dealing with trees and power lines and you're exposed to this continuous wind for, a minute, maybe 5-10 minutes, depending on how close you are to the center of circulation. And then you have soggy grounds, which we will have because I'm going to show you our rainfall totals. It's just reasons to be weather aware. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just saying do things that I'm going to do several things. I don't like to really go to sleep without hearing noise. So I'm going to charge my Bluetooth speaker. Make sure I have batteries for my flashlights. Although, yeah, I know our phones have flashlights. I get it. I'm a millennial. But I'm going to make sure that I have my iPad charged. I'm going to make sure I have my phone charged. And I'm going to make sure that I have my portable chargers charged, right? Because if I'm without power, even if it's just for a couple hours, 10 hours, as a millennial, I'm going to be a little inconvenienced, right? And so will you. So you can do simple things like that. Make sure that you are, planned for maybe potentially being without power for a few hours. That will be our biggest concern. I'm going to take a second to get into the comments. TRS 80 Fan Club, thank you for the detailed and factual commentary. I grew up with the old school meteorologist and the breaths of fresh air for the details. Out in Conyers, thank you so much, TRS. Where do you think the cold front will collide with this hurricane over what states, counties? Right now, it does appear that it could be us, it could be Alabama right now. It does appear that this boundary, obviously with the hurricane lifting northward, it's going to stall at some point. And it does appear that could happen over in West Georgia, it could happen in Alabama. Still days away. And once again, without having a closed low pressure center, it's kind of hard for the models to be able to accurately say. It's already hard 3-4 days out with tropical systems, but it's even harder whenever there is not even a closed low, whenever we're taking the observations to actually ingest those observations into the models. I hope that's not too complicated. I hope, because I'm a meteorologist. We talk to each other about this stuff all day, but that's the issue. Real-time data, we call it observational data. They use observational data to apply to equations in a supercomputer, and that produces future time steps. A series of future time steps is how we get a forecast. The further out from the start point, the more potential for error. Doesn't mean you're off, doesn't mean you're wrong. It's just that you're inviting those type of things. If you leave the house with, a backpack full of dimes and there's a little bit of a leak, a little slit in the bottom of the bag, you may be a little off whenever you get to your destination. You may only lose 6 dimes, but you're still going to be off. Hopefully that makes sense. It's coming to Georgia. So Jack Shipley, a good question. It is going to make landfall most likely in Florida, but it's going to lift northward into Georgia, and we're going to get impacts. And it's going to be a large system. So we're concerned about where the center is, because if we're on the east side or the right side of the center, we're going to not only have to deal with all of the rain and all of the wind, but we'll likely have to also deal with the potential for brief spin-ups, right? So all of these things are the question marks. Where does the track go? And, if it moves right through Atlanta, the eastern side of our viewing area is going to have to deal with all of those potential issues. Clark County County, all of those counties, Jasper Putnam counties. If this moves closer to the Georgia border, if it takes a more westward track, then we're all going to be dealing with not only the rain and the wind, but also the potential for spin-ups. Not to mention the right side is always the more aggressive side. It's the most turbulent side. TRS has said he's worried with the collision of the cold front, warm front. Yeah. TR, I wouldn't be scared. This is just kind of like a, hey, this on top of it. As long as you know what's coming and you're prepared for it, you're good. Jack Shipley is asking, when's the cool weather coming to Atlanta? Unfortunately, it's coming with this system, because with all this rain and cloud cover, temperatures are going to fall back into the 70s and low 80s. So we'll get a cool down there. Unfortunately, it's going to come with bad weather. Cold front on track for Thursday from the 5-day. So the cold front the reason for the cool down, in theory, isn't because of the front. It's because of the clouds and the rain. Because the cold front kind of stalls out and then kind of pushes back, if that makes any sense. It kind of retreats a little bit. Would it hit North Georgia as a Cat 3? No. This system will, good question, Princess Kiki. This system will weaken. Every hurricane weakens as it moves inland. Essentially, hurricanes thrive off of warm, it's called latent heat. Essentially, it comes out of the warm ocean water. If you don't have warm ocean water, if the system isn't over warm ocean water, it cannot continue to intensify. So it weakens. You have that, not to mention as these systems move inland, it experiences friction because friction is, the force of friction. It's greater over land than it is over water. Does that make sense? So you have the force of friction weakening the system, but you also have the fact that it's away from its energy source. So it's going to weaken more than likely by the time it arrives in North Georgia. At this point, it does appear worst case scenario would be that we would have tropical storm force winds in parts of our area. That's the moving thesis that we're rolling with right now. Once again, I want to make sure that everybody understands we don't even have a defined low right now. So this could shift a little bit. But we're giving you, our whole purpose of our First Alert Weather brand is to tell you what we see when we see it, break down what we think our guidance is based off of the information that we have now. The cool thing about having 7 meteorologists is that right now while I'm out here, Fred's in the back and he's looking at some of the newer model runs that are coming through. The 18Z models are coming in and he's looking at that so we can fine tune our forecast for our 10 o'clock show and our 11 o'clock show. And then in the morning, our morning Mets are doing the same thing throughout the day. So every time we get some new information, that First Alert Weather app is going to be the first place we push it. We'll update our website after that, and then we'll tell everybody else on TV. But are the models forecasting high confidence a metro Atlanta impact? GG and STEM is asking that. Yeah, essentially all of the models are saying at least 40 miles per hour wind gusts, 50 miles per hour wind gusts, some saying 60 miles per hour wind gusts. Obviously in the mountains that could get enhanced a little bit because of topography, but all of the models are saying 40 to 60 miles per hour wind gusts. And as far as rainfall totals, we're going to get into the rainfall totals because I actually have a graphic built here, but they're all saying substantial rain. The National Weather Service issues products based off of what models we're looking at, yada, 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 and the probability of there being flash flood watches. And on Wednesday, there's a probability of a flash flood watch. And one could deduce that Wednesday's going to be, this is going to be mainly extreme west and northwest Georgia Wednesday, but still with that first round of rain, if we're getting the potential for flash floods, then that's going to continue. And probably that risk percentage will probably go up beyond 15% once we get into Thursday and Friday. But good question, GG. TRS says basically define closed low for us. So think about the closed low. So everybody knows that a low pressure system is just it's basically a system where pressure is falling, right? And the best way to describe it is think about a hurricane and its eye. The eye is the equivalent to the closed low of a low pressure system, if that makes any sense. What is a spin up? Pinky57, what is a spin up? Great question. A spin up is a brief tornado. That's very typical in landfalling hurricanes. It's actually typical in landfalling tropical systems. It can be a tropical storm or tropical depression. On the right side, depending on the atmospheric setup, you can get brief spin-ups, brief tornadoes. Typically, whenever you have a hurricane or any tropical system, the tornadoes are weaker. They're brief, they're short-lived, and they kind of fall down, and they go back up. They typically are weaker. But that means that we could be potentially dealing with tornado warnings throughout this event as it's moving into our region. So we're actually working on our staffing plan. We're going to have around-the-clock staffing to make sure that you guys are aware of what we're seeing. If there's a warning, we're going to cut into TV, but you'll also get alerts on our First Alert Weather app, especially if you're in a location where, even if you're not here, if you're down in Macon for the week or whatever, you will get those alerts to your phone, tornado warning, based off of your geolocation. Hi, where should I be Where should I be? I live between Scotland and McMurray, PA. Where should I be next month for heat? Um, Lumi, let's talk about that after after this system moves through. Billy Williams thinks this is a big joke. You're entitled to your own opinion. You know, we're just telling you what we see. We're not hyping anything. That's the cool thing about the First Alert Weather brand. It allows us to tell you what we see when we see it. We're telling you that there's not even a closed low right now, but the environment is conducive for this system to develop over the course of the next couple of days. Maybe on Wednesday, when you find out that there's a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, you'll be slightly more of a fan or a believer. And then whenever, if you live in North Georgia and there's 50, 60 miles per hour winds maybe moving through your area, maybe then you'll be a believer. But I can't convince you. But thank you for joining us this evening. I appreciate all commentary. TJ says we've had a storm hit Middle Georgia with Cat 2 force winds before, but that was an Atlantic storm that didn't spend as much time over land before reaching us. If you remember what year that was, TJ, I've only been here for coming up on 2 years in January, but I'd love to go back and look up that storm. No joke from Lumi. I'm with you, Lumi. Caleb, no, you're not going. That's overstatement. Planning on going to the Braves game on Wednesday night. Is it looking like a washout? Wednesday night's not looking like a washout, but it's going to get wet around 6 o'clock, and it's just going to depend on how far that front pushes through before that tropical moisture moves in. If you already have tickets, I'd stay tuned and probably make those plans the day of. If you haven't bought tickets yet, I probably wouldn't, just because it does look like there's just going to be a lot around. Let's get you back to this forecast because I kind of wanted to I'll come back to some of these questions in just a few minutes. I wanted to, my model is updating, so we'll fast forward past this. But tropical storm force wind gusts upwards of 39 miles per hour will be possible as early as Thursday and into Friday. I wanted to show you this rainfall outlook. A lot of the guidance is hinting at this. This is going to shift a little bit. Where the reds are, where the oranges are, this will probably move around a little bit over the next couple of days. Once we get a better handle on this system, once we can get a better handle on its intensity, and once it gets past the Yucatan Peninsula, I know that sounds crazy, but the Yucatan could make or break this storm. One of the variables, depending on where the center forms, where the actual center of the low develops, if it's slightly east, that can mean a stronger storm. If it develops slightly west, it could move over the Yucatan, which would slow down its intensification process. But none of that will impact the rain part of this. We're all going to get a lot of rain, and we fully expect there to be roughly 2 to 5 inches of widespread rain across the area. But there is the potential, especially with this cold front that's going to be in the vicinity, that it can enhance some of these rainfall totals. So there could be some areas, some isolated locations that gets upwards of 5 inches of rain. Still days out. We'll dive into that once we get those. But our whole goal here is to just give you the big picture of what we're seeing right now. And the cool thing with weather is that as we get data, it's new data, it's a new story. We can come to you, we can give you what we see. But it does look like this is going to be a very wet event. And one thing that I've learned from being in this area for almost 2 years, which isn't a long time, I'm just saying, when you have saturated grounds and you have gusty winds, that's a recipe for trees to come down. So we want to make sure that everybody is staying on top of that, and you are aware that this risk is coming. Beyond that, I mentioned earlier, there's another area that's going to be developing off the coast of Africa, and that area has about a 70% chance of development. So that's something else that we're going to be watching. Still days away from having any real impacts to any of us, but we have our hands full with this system that's going to be moving into the area later this week. Once again, a cold front approaching Wednesday. That's a first alert weather day because there's going to be some scattered rain and storms. Admittedly, it does look like this front hangs out over northwest Georgia a little bit longer and then eventually tries to shift further east, which means that rain chance Wednesday for folks that are here in the city of Atlanta and a large chunk of the metro, it could be a little delayed. If the models continue to hang up that front to the west, that means that West Georgia could really get hammered with rain, and then we could be on the lighter end of the spectrum here in Atlanta. It does appear like that rain starts to move into Atlanta around 6. right now. So we'll continue to dive into that. Like I said, meteorologist Fred Campagna is in the back. We're getting new data. We'll have that updated timeline on the Wednesday frontal passage and the rain and storm opportunity for that. And then obviously we'll have new data on the tropics for you at 10 and 11. 10 on Peachtree TV, 11 on Atlanta News First. But we're wet through Friday. The forecast for the weekend trends a little bit drier. There's still some moisture around, but we won't be dealing with the soakiness that we're going to have to deal with, specifically Thursday and Friday. Let me get back to these questions. TRS fan said, Saturday forecast, any potential heavy rains? Saturday's looking better. A lot of the models had some rain sticking around on Saturday. That rain chance has dialed back. Not enough for us to take away the rain chance on Saturday right now, but it will not be as wet as it will be Thursday, Friday, although the grounds are going to be saturated. So you said that you're going to a game and Sweet Auburn Music Fest. Forgive me for not knowing what the Sweet Auburn Music Fest is. Is this held like in a park, or is this held like in a stadium? Because if it's on concrete, you're good. If it's in the park, that's going to be a messy situation, man. Rita saying thanks for all I do. Thank you so much. It's not just me. I got a whole team. We have been talking about this system since last week. Y'all know we were mentioning, sprinkling it into shows, the potential for this system to develop. We were telling you there was a whole lot of uncertainty. It's coming back, coming into view. Impacts to us, gonna be rain, a lot of rain, gonna be windy. Just how windy depends on where that center tracks. And it also depends on when this actual low develops and how it develops. So that's something that we'll be able to kind of fine tune over the next 24 hours. We'll get a better handle on our impacts. But for now, the broader impacts is a lot of rain, a lot of wind. Midnight, glad I recently purchased a new chainsaw the other day. May need it. Midnight Rider, you may be joking, but yeah, you may need it. Looks like TRS had just bought one too. Caleb, on your birthday, listen, man, happy birthday, but yeah, make some plans to be inside. Get a nice birthday cake. Hopefully, if you're 21, a nice glass of something. If you're under 21, a glass of sweet tea will work. TJ, apologies. It was a Panhandle storm, Hurricane Michael. Cutter was talking about that. I think Cutter was working in Savannah in 2018. So he was telling me that there were some pretty significant impacts there. For high school football games, would everything pass over us by like 1 or 2 p.m. on Friday? So yeah, we'll trend drier Friday evening, but once again, it's gonna be really wet, and there's probably gonna be trees down in some places, and there could be some flooding issues in some places. So as long as your schools, I don't know what your turf is like at the school, but this could be real messy. So I wouldn't plan on maybe going to a football game Friday night, but that's just me. You folks always keep me notified of the weather, Caleb. Oh, thank you, Caleb, so much. Appreciate that. TRS, oh my God, you must attend the Sweet Auburn Fest. It's all 5 streets near the Dome. Plenty of music all the way around the Sweet Auburn Market, Grady Hospital area, near the historic YMCA. Oh, that sounds like a vibe. And that actually may be okay because you said that this is, it's 5 streets. So I'm going to have to lock that into my calendar. Yeah, the streets should be okay. Once again, avoiding any issues that we may have with flooding. We don't expect this to be a flooding everywhere thing, but we're talking about widespread totals of roughly 4 or 5 inches of rain, some places getting a little bit more than that. We kind of have to be prepared for that, right? A lot of that has to do with like drainage. Things that we all can do that are actionable is make sure those storm drains on our streets, on our corners, they don't have trash in them, leaves, because I know, even though everyone shouldn't have leaves or whatever, but, there's always just junk in those drains. I think that as long as we can clear our drains, the city's going to be doing its part. We could do our own parts. I think that helps out. Areas that typically flood, that's going to be an issue. As you're riding around the city, part of my commute to work involves getting off of the connector and getting on the 14th Street exit, and on a rainy day, it just turns into a little lake right there. And then you got people that are coming from one way, and then me getting off the connector trying to turn right on 14th. And it's soupy, it's messy, and there's always an issue there when it rains. So we all have our own experiences with what everyday heavy rain does to areas that we travel every day. If you travel Piedmont Road and it rains, and you go under that bridge, passing the towers, going towards, what is that, Cheshire Bridge. Anytime it rains, water collects right there. That's going to be an issue. Don't drive 45 miles per hour. I think it's a 35 miles per hour street speed limit anyway. So it's all of those little things. I'm making light here, guys, but we just want to make sure that we're doing our part. I've kept you here for 30 minutes, and I always promise you that I won't do that. I'm going to keep you here for a good time, not a long time. Thank you guys for being very responsive in the chat on YouTube. TRS is telling me there's lots of food and vendors and gear and music. It's hopping. I'm going to check it out. After this week, I'm going to be looking for something good to do, guys. Stay with us if you have not, because only 25 of y'all have liked the video, but it's hundreds of you in here. If you could give our video a like, share, comment, subscribe, what the YouTubers say. And we will continue to give you these updates. What's your name? Oh, my name's Patrick. I'm sorry. I guess I didn't put my little super at the bottom. Patrick Pete, Meteorologist Patrick Pete. My son Tristan is a fan of you and wants to be a future weather guy. He's 9 years old. Will there be any flooding in Atlanta? There will likely be flooding in Atlanta. To be honest, flooding is not something that you can predict on it's going to happen at 14th and Piedmont. Actually, I don't think those intersect, but you get what I'm saying. But the ingredients are going to be there because we're talking about widespread 3, 4, 5 inches of rain. Some locations getting more than that. So there will likely be some flooding in some places. As far as Tristan wanting to be a meteorologist at 9, that's about a year after I decided I wanted to be a meteorologist. There was a hurricane that forced me to evacuate as a kid, and I got a day out of school, and I was excited. And I kept saying I want to be a meteorologist, and I started reading books and doing book reports on weather stuff, and 20 years later-ish, here I am. 20-something years later, I'm here. So tell Tristan anything he wants to do, he can do it if he puts his mind to it. That's what my folks used to tell me all the time, and that's what I'm passing along. I hope you guys stay safe. It's going to be nasty on Friday. It's going to be nasty Thursday night. I think Thursday night's going to be the worst into Friday morning. Thank you, Pinky, for thanking me for the info. I'm going to let y'all go. We have another newscast that is coming up at 10 o'clock, and we'll have the latest. And you can catch that on Peachtree TV. And if you're not there, you can catch it on Atlanta News First at 11. Y'all have a fantastic rest of your Monday. Stay safe and stay updated.